you everyone for coming out today. This is my friend Jill Klang. She'll be speaking on social class. Jill and I know each other from our master's we got at Teachers College a few years ago in psychological counseling. While there, Jill was a research assistant to Dr. Lau, and she did research and published with him on social class as well as gender-related issues of Asian men. Jill recently got an externship next year at the Brooklyn VA, which is really exciting. She's currently a doctoral student at Fordham University for their counseling psychology program. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for being here. I really value Jill's clinical interpretations, and I feel like I can always count on you for advice in that regard. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Thanks for letting me come here and talk to you guys. Thanks to Terry and the rest of the smart people, like I know that you guys are on the board. So thanks for letting me come here. Let's see. I guess, what else should I say about myself? I'm excited to be here. Alright, so a little bit more about me. So yes, I do go to Fordham, and I'm also teaching right now at Medgar Evers College, and so I feel like this crowd is a little bit older than what I'm used to, so actually this is slightly more intimidating, more facial hair, more like maturity in this audience, so if I get all nervous and flustered, just don't worry, okay? So I came here today to talk about social class. Actually, could you, if you guys have pens and papers, that's good. So we're going to do like a slides activity. But first, I want to get your guys' impressions on what SES and social class mean, because they are different. And a lot of the literature on social class and SES conflate those two things. So what do you think, let's start with SES. What do you guys think SES means? Yes, socioeconomic test.
It also has to do with level of education.
Education, right? Anything else you guys think? SES. Income? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Job status.
Job status? Yeah, like prestige. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think a little bit about ability and like, yeah, I guess like disability, ability,
Right.
ability to gain employment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just think of money, not specifically necessarily income, but also assets that you may have inherited,
Right.
and where that places you in terms of geography, where you can live.
Right, so in terms of the area, like what neighborhood you live in, if it's low income, high
And
income.
resources therefore that you get as a consequence of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I would say also subsequent opportunity that follows with that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, you guys pretty much hit on it. SES is basically the measurable stuff, right? So income, education, how many years, the occupational prestige, the resources and stuff like that. That's all associated with SES. And most people, when they do research and they're doing, usually social class and SES are conflated, so most people ask for income, so like the income brackets. And social class isn't usually studied by itself. It's usually studied kind of more as a demographic variable that they use later on kind of as a statistical analysis, like high income, low income, middle class, have these certain like well-being things, right? Like let's say high income people would have higher well-being, or low income people would have lower well-being. So they usually kind of correlate like that, and most of the studies aren't usually on social class itself. So what do you guys think social class is as that definition? Yeah.
The values Heidi places on certain economic prowess and all the different variables that we just discussed are associated with it.
Right, yeah, so like more like the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think of it as more of the non-measurable things, so like access to resources, as opposed to
Right.
actual resources. So
Yeah.
I just didn't hear the first one.
What's social class?
Oh no, I didn't hear the first
Brown's
answer. Yeah.
Brown,
Oh.
can you just say what you said again?
I said the value that society places on economic
Okay.
variables that we had kind of just discussed and
Okay,
associated
thanks.
with.
Right. So social class is more the unmeasurable, like not as easily measured. So this would be more like the wealth. So wealth, it kind of has the assets that you have. Let's say if you're old money, like old money as in you've inherited this kind of wealth from your parents, or if you have bonds and stocks and stuff like that. Power is huge in social class. The relation you have to power, the relation you have to resources, access to resources, control. Control is also huge. So in this kind of discussion of social class, I kind of want to focus on more the relationship people have with power, with money, and less so about money, but more that kind of relationship. So on that piece of paper that you guys all have, I want you guys to write down how many different social classes you think there are. Or like, what are the social classes? Like, what do you think? Yeah.
Are we talking about America?
Yeah.
We have social classes in America? Yeah. Really? No. I don't know.
Can you give like an example, like, one would be upper class? Like-
Yeah, upper class would be one. So after you guys have written the different social classes you think there are in America, I also want you guys to notify or indicate, like circle, that the one that you think you're in. Okay. And then, this is the difficult part, which is so what I think is important for all clinicians is to realize, the awareness, skills, and what's the other one? Knowledge. Wait, yeah, right. Not in that order. Right. Knowledge, skills, and awareness. Right. So awareness. Okay. So that's important for all clinicians. Right. So what I want you guys to do right now is, with all those different social classes you wrote down, write down your stereotypes and biases for each one, including the one you're in. And this is a little bit more time consuming. So just think about it. Okay. And the stereotypes could be good or they could be bad.
Stereotypes that we've heard or stereotypes
Anything. Anything. So stereotypes you think that is of, let's say, upper class. Right.
It's because I don't know in the classes. I could do socioeconomics. Oh, is that what you wrote?
Oh, no.
No. I thought I was all right. I thought you said something else.
How's this activity for you guys so far? Is it hard?
I guess for me, it's quite ambiguous in that because there's a relationship with so many different variables, and for example, thinking of graduate students, the relationship with money is kind of poor in that we're not having a steady income, but yet there is a strong relationship with the possibility of earning or accessing power or educational resources, but not necessarily economic resources. So it's this very kind of ambiguous task of trying to delineate where these different classes
Yeah.
exist, because there could be potential for future access, but yet not current access.
Yeah, we're kind of in a weird group. We are in a very strange group. We're kind of like bizarre little creatures that we kind of have our own little social class in a way. But we do have kind of, sometimes we inherit what our parents bring to us. Like, so they may be working class, so you inherit those working class values. So you hold that with you when you go to graduate school. So you may be somebody, so this is a stereotype that I have with working class people, that they are hardworking and they will always work hard for whatever they get. They don't think that things are just going to come to them. They're going to do 110% each time. So there are, I'm sure you guys know, graduate students who are like that, and there are other ones who may be from a different social class. So you'll see their approach to like academics or whatever other things you have to do, a little bit different, right? So we do have this ambiguousness because we're kind of developing our social class, but then the values that we associate it with, like kind of how we approach life, will still be somewhat stable. Like, and sometimes that's inherited from your parents. Thanks for your comment. Anybody else? Do you guys have a certain feeling about this little activity? Is it easy? Is it hard? What's it like? Yeah.
I find it hard. I feel like what I'm writing down, I'm like, there's such assumptions. You know, it's just something that, like, if I was to sort of, have a conversation with someone about, I wouldn't come out and say that thing, and I would think about both sides, and I would think about it more like rationally. It's not rational, but I might be in a situation where I'm, just out with people, like I was somewhat recently, and I was hearing about all these things that these people were doing, and blah, 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 and I felt so much envy because I'm not able to do those things.
Right.
And so then, like, some of the assumptions, like, well, it's just easier to live if you're upper class, that kicked in. Or it's, less struggle, which is not true at all. But maybe less struggle with particular things.
Right.
But, like, so it's just weird to kind of get in touch with those feelings through the exercise.
Yeah.
And I don't really like having them, but.
No, but I mean, this is kind of what this activity is all about, is to realize what stereotypes and biases that you do have, and it's not necessarily your own, right? It's sometimes society pushing those things onto you, and then you kind of adopt it maybe along the way, or you know of it and you recognize it, but you don't feel it for yourself. So it is tricky. Yeah.
In filling it out, I sort of noticed that there was quite often in each different group I listed conflictual or conflicting information. For example, like working class, I have lazy but also hardworking, and those are opposites, And so thinking about, those are both stereotypes that a lot of people, or I've heard, and thinking, okay, now what's my opinion about this? And then trying to go through that process is quite confusing.
Yeah.
Of like what you've heard and then what you believe, and figuring out that in between sort of space.
Sometimes it's okay to have both. They could be conflictual. Sometimes. Yeah.
I actually did the same thing that Kateri said. I was going more. I have a few conflictual things too, but I think that the fact that they contradict each other just shows that even within each class, there's clearly different types of people. Not just, they won't just be hardworking people in their class, but also will be lazy people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to share anything about their kind of process as they were going through this? So this activity is meant to be difficult. It is meant to be difficult. If it came really easily to you, then that's good. Maybe you're super far along the kind of the development in terms of being knowledgeable about social class, and that is amazing. But sometimes maybe it's because you're not quite aware of the blinders you have on. So what I want you guys to do right now is get into little like groups of 4 and just discuss with each other what are the different social classes, because everyone's going to have different kind of like levels. So some people may think that upper middle is a class of its own, or they have like upper middle, middle, lower middle. Like some people may not differentiate between that. So I want you guys to get in groups of 4, talk about the different groups that you put down. You don't have to divulge your own group. Just talk about the different groups you put down, and then tell each other what your biases are. Sorry,
Can you say that again louder one more time?
That's my class.
Oh yeah.
Wait, guys, everyone listen for directions before you start.
So groups of 4, talk about the different classes that you put down and also the stereotypes you have in each class. And just discuss it amongst yourselves. And then I want you guys to kind of get the question, and then we'll come back together.
In the garbage can.
Missing out on stuff.
That's my class. Yeah.
You have some feelings about this topic?
I didn't even realize we had classes until I copied off of theirs. Oh no! See, I thought of copying over you guys, and I thought, oh yeah, we don't have a middle class anymore. That's why it's
No, the middle class is growing.
disappearing.
Oh, that's true.
Is all turning into a low class. Which is why I've now become the garbage can class.
Are you talking about like those hard like plastic garbages or metal ones?
Yeah, what class is your
Like off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's different. He seems comfortable. He's been there for years. Yeah.
The tin ones are grosser. I like the rubber ones. Wash them out.
He's got like one of them big rubber ones.
I like wheels.
That's it. There's the giveaway. Can I talk about so that's you get to write like advertisers.
Is this news here?
That's it. Funny story.
That's my favorite type of
There was
story.
like, they've actually like advertisers, salads, drinks, parentheses, wine or beer, drink, parentheses, water, soda. So I got this shit, I was like, well, you wrote wine. You're supposed to write your name, not the drink.
I put out my name too.
Well, you just wrote what you were bringing? Oh, there you go.
I was wondering who that was.
Oh, but I didn't bring that. Then if I forget it, no one knows. But I.
Is this packaging here?
I have one. I'll bring beer. Yeah. It's easier for me to bring. I have to go somewhere to get one. There's cheap wine at Whole Foods, but it's only sold at certain locations. Right. But I can buy beer everywhere, so. You sure? Yes. If you already have wine, just bring it.
I guess you guys are an excuse for me to buy salad.
So you're bringing wine?
Mushroom salad.
Yeah. I have like sell bottles, so I used to get that like. It's a really good time.
You're with me down here. We're talking about jugs of wine. You're with me right here. I do have my phone and
That's a good story.
the jugs of wine level.
It's like prepackaged or the one they make in their like salads. Really? Well, some boxes of wine are actually not bad.
I mean, if there's like a kosher certification.
That's what you enjoy so much, and you must love your office. Huh? That's what you enjoy so much, and you must love your office.
If that's what if that's what I'm saying.
Hearing lovely stories about you.
Oh, yeah. That's not what you say much. Do we? It's something that's not working.
Go get it.
We're the only ones who are on
I
I love how we'll figure all that out though, but this is all. Yeah. I'm like smaller. You're so proud of me.
was going to tell you.
No. Yeah? Because you're going to mix all that brand.
I would bring process. No ingredients.
It's just too long to make that.
It's like a 36-hour marathon.
You want to do that? That'll be cute. That'll be us.
It's a little easy to do.
Yeah. We asked.
So I think we're being a challenge for somebody.
Is Trolloc the same in every?
No, but similar enough. I mean, there's different versions of it. What's your version? Like my version of chili?
Okay, I've only ever had either my grandma made it. I've never had a lot of variants.
Except that you already might have one.
And you probably put in barbecue sauce.
No, but like, someone makes that potato with the meat. Ever had that with the meat inside of it? I know what
You guys eat like tonight, or I don't eat it, but in my family, it's like everyone. You guys like to come back to me? Yeah.
Oh, so what do we do? The three levels.
Alright guys, so, how was that conversation like? What was that conversation? What was it like?
There was some general consensus that we all came into it with, but also different ideas, and I guess it just sort of shows how we all have such different ideas about, personal identity and other people's, and how that fits into how you see experience.
Definitely, it's complex, right? There's no one particular answer. People have very different views of what social class is.
Well, one thing I noticed that we actually didn't speak about our classes that we circled, and I wondered if our own particular social class affected how we perceive like a hierarchy of social class.
Yeah, that's one question I wanted to ask you guys. I guess I'll just ask it now. So, do you guys, if you guys look at the one you circled, right? Do you notice a trend in terms of what types of stereotypes you put down for that social class, right? And then, like whether it's all positive or all negative, or very mostly positive, mostly negative. And then if you view another group more more favorably or less favorably? And then just examine that, just look at it, and we don't have time to process it now, but definitely what you wrote on your papers definitely shape how you view like the rest of the world, right? What you identify as definitely affects how you interact with other people, right, of higher or lower social classes. Okay? So I wanted to ask, what else did you guys like learn? Let's say learn from other people's responses. Was it the same? Was it different? How so? That's a lot of questions. Don't do that in counseling.
Yeah, sorry, again, but one thing that came up was the political implications of class, and especially now, when you see different terms getting thrown out, like white collar, blue collar, and how important this is.
What does that even mean, right? Yeah. So, anybody else? In terms of what were different, what's the same? Surprising? Anything surprising? Yeah.
I guess for me, I am not sure which class to say I even identify with, because like people that, like when I was growing up, I did live with some family who were like upper middle class, and had certain privileges that, you know, quite maybe upper class would do things that like more upper class individuals would do. So that's like a part of me.
Right.
And at the same time, I also have had experiences like with, like I lived with my grandparents for a while, and like they were more upper middle class. And then like my parents, my mom grew up that, but became more working class. So that's a big part of me. And I just feel I mean, I feel like if you look at my income right now, I'm definitely like working class. But I won't be once I'm out there working, but I just feel such identity confusion around like what class I'm even a part of, because I'm just on the like board, I'm on the border of so many different, I'm just between different ones, which is helpful in terms of I can identify with different ones. But I don't know, it kind of brings up some anxiety, because I'm like, I don't know where I belong.
Yeah, right?
Or where I come from, really, you know, all these different places.
Right. I think one point that, you know, you brought up was the fact that there's social mobility, right? You guys are, that's why you guys are here, right? There's social mobility. You hope that whatever class you're in now, you're going to rise up and be, what class do you guys want to be in? Is there a consensus what class you want to be in? Right? Whatever it is, right? You want to be probably a higher class, right? Remember that money is not the defining feature of social class. It's your relationship to money. So there are actually instances where there are people, let's say, they're working class, but they scrape up every penny to buy that Gucci bag. They scrape up every penny to buy that belt, that Gucci belt. Okay? And they may look a certain type of way, and you might be like, oh, that person has money. But really, they're working their ass off to get to that point where they can present themselves as such. But regardless of how they look, they still have working class values, let's say. Right? So you can't confuse money with social class. And so kind of going back to the social mobility, that's kind of what we see as, I guess, the American dream, right? We can come to the US and then we can work our ass off and then get to some other place, right? And I think we confuse that with income a lot of the time. But really, it's not really the income, it's the resources. So you guys are going to school so that your resources will open up, right? The education that you have, you can use to have more power and influence. Because really, when you counsel somebody, you have a lot of power over them. We may not want to say that, but we kind of do, right? But then also at the same time, when you guys are thinking about being psychologists, right? Do you guys want to go to private practice? Do you guys want to go into like working at a community agency? Do you guys just want to teach? At those different levels, they all have different social class implications. So somebody who's doing private practice they can actually be, they're small business owners. That's what they are. And they are actually there's this thing called the capitalist class, where anybody who owns their own business, which would be private practice people, are the capitalists. You may not think of that kind of as your automatic go-to, like, oh, psychologists and private practice, capitalists. But they are. And then there are people who work at like a university and they're academics the whole entire life. They're, I would say, upper middle class because they have a cap as to how much they can earn, right? They can't earn like an infinite amount of money. Their resources and power is limited too because there's always going to be somebody else who's like the dean or the department head or whatever it is, who's going to be above them, controlling how much they can do or how much influence they have, right? So it's complex. It's really strange. So now getting back to the assignment that you guys were doing, what were the different levels of social class that you guys saw? What do you think is up top? Anybody? Yeah?
The 1%.
Yes, the 1%. What would you call the 1%? Is there a name for that?
A word that I can't repeat out loud.
Okay. Upper class, okay. What do you think is under that? Under upper? Yeah.
There, in our group, we had some people who just broke it down into upper, lower, and middle, and some people broke down middle class. There was no breaking down of the upper class or the lower class, but the middle class was really there.
Where more of the diversity came in.
Right, so it was either upper, middle, or lower middle. So, depending on your outlook, that determines what comes next.
Okay, so now there's a whole bunch of
I actually broke the upper class into two like separate classes, but the middle class I still split into three separate sections. I ended up with like 8 different classes in my list because it just seems like there's so much diversity in each class too.
Yeah. Well, what did you split the uppers to?
I had an upper and an upper lower or lower upper.
Lower upper? Yeah.
And contrasting in our group a little bit, we had a tiny little discussion about the difference between upper middle and middle upper. Eric over here had actually said, there is a group of people that want to be in the upper class that want to be a little more humble maybe and not present so bourgeois or whatever you want to say.
Right.
And that's people who want to seem more down to earth, that may be upper middle, but like myself, I identify as like middle upper because I'm very middle working class where I come from, but I really want the Gucci bag, belt. Really want the Gucci belt. Wow, it's not great. But, let's rewind about 10 seconds. So I want to present a certain way even though I can't, so that's middle upper, so the two of those, when you switch the words, can look
No. There was a hand up over there. No? Anyone else? Well, okay, so we talked about upper. And then we talked about middle. So tell me about the middle. What's in the middle? Did anyone else come up with something besides the upper middle, middle, and lower middle?
Poverty.
Poverty. Where does the poverty go?
Oh, not in the middle, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, is that in the middle? Other class outside of the middle.
Right, so it'll be below middle, right? Okay. So let's go below middle. What's below middle? Yeah.
I don't know where, I did put below middle, I put working, but I didn't really, I'm not arguing for such a class. You said say all the classes that I can come up with.
Yeah, working. So that you say would go below middle, right?
That's where I put it. I don't know if that's right or wrong or what it means. See, the exercise today brings up a lot of politics, so. Just innately, so that's why I'm treading delicately and trying not to say anything while saying something.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Anybody else? What else is below middle? Working class, poverty, and that's it. Low class. Lower class. Is that somehow split up into other groups as well, you think? Or it's just one lower class?
about lower class, and I asked the question, I said something about the idea of people who want to be lower class, or want to live this more simple lifestyle, and those who are just forced into it by whatever.
That's interesting that you say that lower is simple. So could you, I don't want to put you on, right? That's a simple lifestyle, right? Right. Right. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
I guess when I think, I'm thinking more like the person who chooses to live a transient homeless lifestyle sort of thing.
Okay.
Without any roots putting down and just sort of going from place to place. But it's like it's such a need.
Okay. Yeah. So you're thinking more like middle and upper class would have more roots. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
and more connections and definitely more responsibilities. Whereas
Okay.
I think of maybe like a really lower class, the person just has no ties to anything.
Okay. Anybody have any? Yeah.
Yeah, we also kind of talked about the ambition aspect of it, like the difference that's contained, like that has to do with whether or not people are striving to kind of improve their situation versus not, or if they have less resources, or so like again I'm treading lightly, but if they're like seeking out a way to kind of improve or work harder or work in general versus kind of not seeking out certain opportunities, and how that's just a distinction.
Do you have like an example of that? Like what would be associated with a certain class that would be, let's say, more motivated or less motivated?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
You guys are treading so lightly. I'm like, just throw it out the window.
Like someone who's attending like a resume building workshop or something where they're going and meeting with someone who's helping them to, you know, on their interview skills and how to get a job, or receiving vocational training at an agency or something, versus someone who's not.
Right, right. But those are more personal differences. But like, I'm asking, like, is there a certain class that you would associate?
Well, no, I mean, I'm not even like implying that. Like, I don't know. There's too many different variables. Like, to even say that it's that simple. You know.
I don't know. Who wants to go first?
I just said that there's a lot of people that term the welfare class, which can maybe capture some of what you're saying. I know that's not what you're saying, but I think maybe that's sort of the non-PC.
That's not, I mean, you know what? None of the things that you guys are saying are going to be mind-blowing, right? None of the things you guys are saying are mind-blowing. There are stereotypes out there, right? And you know that people are going to think something about people who are on welfare. People are going to think things about people who are in poverty, things about middle class, working class, upper class. Those things are stereotypes that everybody knows about. So you guys, by voicing it, doesn't necessarily mean you guys are bad people. Well, everybody has prejudices, but you guys may not necessarily endorse them. But you at least being knowledgeable and not saying that, oh, I can't say this. That would actually be more harmful. So I want you guys to kind of engage in this conversation and be a little bit less PC. I mean, I'm very much less PC, so I say go for it. And you guys are going to offend, but if you're offended, think about why. How is that related to your social class and what you think? Yeah.
So I think I just wanted to go back to something we were talking about before about the differences between social class having to do more with power and less with income a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard concept for a lot of us to separate because,
yes.
You know, in a lot of people's minds, class is so tied to money.
Yeah.
But just to put it in perspective a little bit and hopefully jog some conversation, a union electrician, right, would be considered someone lower class who we've deemed like below middle class and the working class, right? Those people make more money than a lot of us will make starting salaries when we get out of this program.
Yes.
So the garbage men, we're city workers, so like it's all, but yet those are still people that would be considered part of the working class or the lower class, even though their salaries are higher than any money we'll be making with doctorates in the beginning. So a power does very much play into it, and I just sort of wanted to bring that back to
Yeah. What you're talking about is prestige, right? The prestige of being a garbage man or a plumber, not so prestigious, but they make bank. if you guys decided to become plumbers tomorrow, you guys would probably pay off your loans pretty quickly. Right? If you can have that, I'll give it to you. Okay. I'm just gonna go
No,
here.
that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, it was open to go more of what we were trying to say about mobility classes. I sort of understood, I put my highest class as wealthy slash rich, and then I put upper class and middle class. And I sort of put that, everybody's not, huh?
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I sort of put my highest class as wealthy slash rich, and I put upper class, middle class, and then put it that way. And I sort of understood it as, when we were discussing it, that anybody not in this wealthy rich class is really going to move upward on some level.
Right.
I call them, little sycophantic, like in their movements, and so they'll ultimately try to do things that will make themselves seem like they're more wealthy than they are, or be trying to do something to push themselves up, which is not bad, trying to elevate yourself. But, everyone. Except for the top. Although I would also think that maybe those at the top are trying to stay at the top. They're probably fighting to push them down so that they don't become upper class and stay wealthy rich.
Yeah, I mean, think about the gap, right? The 1%, 99%, right? The gap between the rich and poor is getting worse and worse and worse. And the one thing that I want to say about middle class is that I heard someone say that middle class is like disappearing. Middle class is getting pushed down a little bit more, right? Before, in like the American Dream days, like in the 50s, right? You could be middle class and that was a very comfortable life. Now if you're middle class, you can get your house foreclosed because you don't have enough money to pay off like all the different things that you have, the different expenses you have. At the same time, you don't make not enough money to get government assistance, right? Some of you guys may be in that class. So that's why maybe you guys are here. Some of you guys may be working class. That's why you guys are here. Some of you guys may be upper middle class. You guys are all here for a certain reason, and that's probably maybe for social mobility, maybe for just the prestige of it, right? But there's different reasons to why people are here. And I think I'm just going off on my little rants. But so let's get back to you guys. So yeah.
Since we opened it up to be offensive, I just thought I'd throw out a different class, going by where I live, which would be like the ghetto class.
The ghetto class? Okay.
Which I would say that they probably have more money than some of the people there, as I see their Mercedes and BMWs and whatnots parked outside. So they're making pretty good money. So I would say that definitely that has nothing to do necessarily with money.
I'm a little bit confused about what you mean by ghetto class. Could you explain that a little bit more?
So like in a poor neighborhood,
right?
But yet people tend to have some money, and oftentimes it is made from dealing drugs.
Okay, that's.
There's a lot of drug activity where I live.
So you're talking about like kind of the criminal, the blood money kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Very loud and fighting and gunshots and that kind of stuff. So, but they have money, some of them.
Yeah, do you want to comment?
Yeah, it's funny because it's actually like, I totally know what you're talking about. It's kind of the same as what you were saying before with like people who, save up what they have to buy like the Gucci bag as opposed to saving up to pay for something that might be more productive or something like that. It's like about the flash, So it's like, there's this kind of like the same type of showiness or, ostentation like in a more upper bracket as well. Like, it's the same kind of like, look at what I have, let me show off, even though like that's as far as it goes. Like they have enough resources to appear that way. The appearance is very important, but there's not much beyond that. So that's why I asked, like, do they have health insurance? Because in New York, it's like $500, $600 a month.
Yeah.
So they might have a nice car and like great clothes and stuff like that, but like, how often do they go on vacation, or something like
Their
that?
health insurance is in the form of a gun.
Which is kind of similar to, kind of an upper bracket. I think it's kind of like a parallel.
And I think social class is also related to how you spend your money. what are you spending money on?
Right.
Right, that's what you guys are talking about?
Like, are you investing, like, how are you going to invest in furthering stuff?
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different mentality too, depending on income and how people grow up thinking about money. So if you're never, if you grow up not knowing how to invest in stocks and not having anyone teach you how to open a savings account or anything like that, your mentality is, I have this money, sometimes, not everyone's, but you have this mentality, if I have money that has come to me, this money may not be here tomorrow, I better buy something I want with it now. You know, whereas, you know, someone who is raised in a different type of class might be taught from 5 years old, okay, well, we open a savings account, we put our money in our piggy bank, you know, to save, and it builds interest and all of that. So it's a lot, too, about what you grow up with and the education that you're given on the way about how to use that money and how to, you know, what to do with it.
Yeah.
All right, just to echo Carrie's point, actually there's a huge thing for Lebanese communities that because there's been so many wars that a lot of people will spend all the money that they have, not all, but a great percentage of the money they have because of that mentality of who knows what will happen tomorrow. There's definitely a intergenerational cultural aspect to transfer.
Right. What else do I want to point? Does anyone have? Yeah.
I was just thinking about the assumptions that are made about intelligence and class. I think that often dictates someone who you might consider in the lower class, or you might think that they're not as smart as someone in the middle class or the upper class.
I kind of want to open it up to those. Anybody offended? Anybody offended? I want to hear from you guys.
A very meaningful silence.
Right? Anyone offended?
I'll throw myself out there. I was offended by the term ghetto class.
I knew somebody had to be offended by that.
I mean, I found that to be more of a racial statement than a social class statement, personally. So
Yeah, but that's a stereotype. That's a stereotype for that, let's say, lower class. There tends to be some, like, lower class, people tend to think that it's going to be people of color. Right.
Which is not what I would mean.
But,
right.
I mean, especially living in New York City and having worked in the projects, you don't see a whole lot of white people walking around the project. So, so the term ghetto class does have a certain connotation to it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really hardworking people that live in the projects too. So.
And like to think about that comment from a different perspective than race, like the values involved in how people make decisions about money is something that I think we should try to all understand instead of judge.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to like just thinking about how you can relate this personally to you guys, which is your social class could be completely different from what your parents grew up with, right? I'm sure, like I know my parents, they always like to talk about how they were barefoot and they had to walk through the mountains to get to school like an hour away, and that they had to scrape up a lot of money to try to even like go to whatever to pay for shoes. And I know that's like I'm Taiwanese, so that's a super Taiwanese thing to say, is that they came from nothing and that they're working so hard. But I myself, I identify as upper class. And that there's a disparity there, that my parents have certain values that they work really hard for what they have. And for me, I kind of take it for granted just because it was always there for me. So I have different social class than my parents. I have a different social class than I think some of my siblings. Like the values that we have are different. And also, if you have a significant other, they may have different social classes from you, right? And that's like, it's a good point to be kind of cognizant of those values. Like sometimes maybe if I know this comes up for me, is like when I go out and have dinner with people, sometimes like I'm not sure about how to pay at the end. I know that for me, this is a very Asian thing, so like other reference groups that you may have, like racial, ethnic, whatever other type of things can influence your social class. So I know for me, the Asian component tells me that, hey, one person pays for the whole meal, and then we switch off like the different meals. And then there are other people who just go split down right in the middle, right, between the different people. Or it could just be one person, I don't know. But the point is that the significant others, that can cause conflict as well. So if you have a certain like working class values, like I work hard for my money, and I'll pay for everything. And then the upper class person who's like, okay, give it to me. I'm used to being, I guess, flowered with money, or showered with money. So I'm just gonna accept it. So I actually find that my friends actually pay for me a lot, and I'm like, I'm okay with it. And that's a little messed up, but I own it, right? Like it's like if my friends want to pay for me, all right, okay, want to get this couple dollars for me, okay, because that's my value, right? So just to personalize it to you guys, just think about that. Like what kind of friends do you keep? Are they going to be the same kind of social class? Are they a different social class from you, right? And then going back to just like what you guys wrote down on your papers, do you think that you, or why do you, I don't know, has it changed after this conversation? Do you think your social class, would you have moved yourself anywhere? Does anyone, you think you guys moved anywhere? No? I'm jumping all over the place. My brain's, yeah.
Like that as grad students, you consider yourself to be in the working class, like as a grad student? You said that in the back. I thought that was interesting. I never thought of it that way. Like as a grad student, because I guess we're working a million hours a week and not earning very much, even though I guess that doesn't necessarily fit either. But I never thought of it that way. So I don't know. But,
would you change your social class because of that?
I mean, I don't want to be in any categories, like I don't really, care, but I mean, if it's, I don't know, I just never thought of it that way as a student. Like I just figured like if you're already in higher education, you're kind of automatically put into one of the higher categories just because of the resources that are here. We have a roof over our heads, we have central air, we have other stuff, so kind of if it's related to money, we automatically have kind of more resources at our disposal.
Yeah, I think that's a stereotype that people have about grad students, is that we do have a whole bunch of different privileges that other people are not privy to, right? Like, this is a privilege for us to be here, FYI, right? There's some people who think it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go to grad school because my parents went to grad school. Right, so maybe that's a thing for you, just to continue on that legacy. But there are people here who work their butt off to get here, and they don't necessarily have all that. Like, so when you guys are trying to go out after class or something, sometimes you don't want to go to that place that costs $50 a meal, right? And you are very cognizant of how long it'll take for you to figure out loans, or how long it'll take for you to repay loans, and that income that you make after you graduate. Am I making sense? I feel really off today, so I'm sorry. But I feel off and I feel weird, but it's probably because of this whole. I'm intimidated by you guys, but it's because you guys are all like engaged, and usually my students are not. So. Yeah.
One thing that keeps coming up and that I've been thinking about is the difference between different people's relationships to their money, and I was just thinking about how my own relationship will be to my money when I do make money one day, and just how that's going to be different for me as I went through different classes, because I come from more of a middle class, but then heading into the next few years it's more working lower type class, and then it's going to be higher than I even started to begin with. So I think that my relationship to my income and to my privileges and whatever it is going to be very different than somebody who was just born into an upper class and just kept floating through straight through their life in that way. And I think it's just a very different, we might end up in the same class, but we're going to feel very differently in that class.
Mm-hmm. So your values may change once you move up, you're saying?
Yeah, and I think that like myself as being in like more of an upper class later would be very different than a different person who's in the same class as me, and will have very different values based on where we're coming from.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could tell us in like counseling diet how people from, if you know we're one class and the client's a different one, how we might, if we should address that, if it needs to be brought up, that sort of interaction.
Right. Addressing this is my personal opinion, is that it'll come up in one form or another. Right? Whether it's the way you dress professionally or not professionally in class, your client may comment on that. And you can bring it up. Or you may just have certain types of feelings, you just want to bring it up beforehand. But I think the most important part is to recognize if you're bringing it up first, why you're doing that. Right? Do you feel like this person, let's say that your person is of lower class or working class or homeless? We haven't even talked about homeless people. And what are those values that you're projecting onto these people? They're lazy, maybe, and you don't think that they're going to get out of drug rehab because homeless people are druggies, or homeless people are veterans, or homeless people are whatever. They have mental health issues, and they'll never get past that. So social class is always embedded in your relationship with people. But we don't necessarily address it very often, but we can definitely address it. I think one of the fears that we have about that is the fact that we are unclear as to what our own social class is and what we understand as the different levels. Right? So we're kind of like, I'm Asian and I know I'm Asian, right? So when I'm communicating with someone, it's very clear for me. I'm saying, oh, I'm Asian, and you are this, and we can talk about it. But if we're talking about social class, it may be a little bit more fuzzy, kind of how we've talked about this entire time. It's fuzzy. So how are you going to address that? Especially if you're from a higher class than your client, like how are you going to do that without being condescending? Or how are you going to do that without trying to like support them and be like, oh, poor baby, like I want to help you, right? How would we do that? What do you guys think? How do you guys think you address it in the counseling relationship? Has it ever come up?
Well, I mean, it's come up with me and my own therapist when we were trying to establish a fee, and she basically left it kind of open-ended. It was like, you know, how much are you looking to give? And we worked through that because what I can offer right now is based on my lack of income. So, you know, we just spent a little bit of time talking about what that meant for me, and, you know, if she was willing to accept that fee. So I think she did a really good job with it. I don't know that I would be able to replicate that with my own clients someday, but it was good to experience it from the client side and to see that she, you know, addressed it and talked about whether or not we both were comfortable. It was helpful.
Did the word social class come up for you guys in that?
No, it was like,
it was more
guys, the word student, and I know it's like a safe way, like, oh, I'm a student, you know, so I don't have an income right now. But I don't know how it would have played out if, you know, this was my income level and I didn't have the excuse of grad school.
I mean, there's also, you know, and to jump on it as well, there's also inadvertent ruptures that are going to happen based on social class that we're not going to be able to control, you know, in our future career. Like, I'm working my ass off right now so that when I start practicing privately, and I will buy myself that, you know, two-door Mercedes convertible. I'm going to do that to make a statement, you know, and a Gucci belt. And I'm gonna drive it while wearing it, and I'm gonna, we can see the bag in the trunk. And I'm gonna be practicing one day, and I'm gonna have a conversation about money and with a patient with somebody's finances and struggles and hard times, and then they're gonna follow me out of the office, and they're gonna get into their busted ass car, and I'm gonna get into my Mercedes, and then next week they're gonna have seen me get into that car, and the relationship's gonna be completely different. It's gonna happen in one way or another. They see things, we see things, and just because we're of the mindset that you don't know everybody's story, so don't make assumptions, doesn't mean that the patient is. And so it can be a difficult thing to navigate, I think. That I don't know how to navigate it yet, I just know that it's more than likely going to happen in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just thinking, like, sometimes you won't know, how it's, I guess, going on with what he's saying, like, how your client's reacting to something, or even, you might not even know that they are. Like, a therapist that I had, he was retiring, and he was moving to Naples, Florida. And he was leaving his apartment in, like, Park Slope, Brooklyn, to his daughter. And who's, like, around my age. And I was just like, wow, so nice. You know, I just had, like, I definitely had feelings of envy about it, and it was just like, what a nice thing to have, and, you know, he why did I get that information? That's really strange that he even brought it up. So, like, the therapy was a little bit informal sometimes, where we would just kind of digress, I guess, and go into, like, random topics. But it definitely made me feel, it affected it in some way, and I think it would have been interesting to talk about that, because it's about my own stuff, you know. I mean, it's probably about his own stuff to bring that up, too. I don't think it was really necessary. I think it was too conversational sometimes, but anyway, but it probably would be helpful to, like, work through on my part, because that's going to just happen. People are going to have more than me, people are going to have less, you know, it's just, I gotta work for myself, so.
Do you wanna?
And just kind of going back to the client-therapist relationship, in terms of addressing social class in the room in a therapeutic way, I think it's more about addressing the perception of the class that we will inhabit in the mind of our client being in a therapist role versus the actual social class or values that we come forth with. And I think that's where most of the work will most likely get done, other than what, for example, my actual social class might be low, but I know that my client will look at me as being an upper class just by virtue of being a therapist.
Yeah, that's true. The projection of it is super important. Yeah.
Oh, no, Brianna basically said what I was going to say.
Can I just add something to say before, because I don't think I really answered your question. I think it would be good for, I kind of got lost in my own world. I think it would be good to ask your clients about that. I don't even know if he suspected that I had a reaction to it, or he didn't ask about it.
Yeah.
But you just kind of bring it up to make it seem like it's, to show that it's okay to talk about it, if there is, like, a class difference.
Well, it doesn't even matter if there's a class difference.
Or
People have
yeah.
feelings about class all the time. It's like almost taboo sometimes to talk about it, which is strange. Do you guys want to continue on with this conversation? Because I have a different question, kind of going off in a different direction, because that's like my theme today. It's what is enough for you guys? Because we're talking a lot about kind of social mobility, how we're here because we want to gain something, right? And there's almost this discomfort with staying just at the class you're at. What's wrong with that? Right? So what's enough? What do you guys think is enough? And maybe it's a reflection of the culture. I definitely think it's a reflection of the culture that we're in. Yeah.
My friend had an interesting experience with that because he was really poor. He didn't go to college, and then he started an internet business, and it just like went crazy. And he started getting a lot of money. He's like, when I get this amount of money, it'll be enough, and I'll be happy. And then he got that amount of money, and he said, then when I get this amount of money, it just kept getting like higher and higher. And now he has a new goal, and it's just like it's never enough for him. And he's come to that realization that maybe there isn't enough. So it made me, because I have that same concept, but I'm not making any money. So, but I feel like I'll have that same idea of like, well, this isn't enough either. So.
Yeah.
I think enough is based on what class you're in, or what class you see yourself in. Like if you're, the quote unquote working poor, enough is not going to be the same enough as it is to upper class. And one thing you said it's culture based. Like we as Americans in general, people perceive us, people from collectivist cultures perceive us as very individualistic and like money hungry, and we're constantly chasing something. There's probably a psychological term for that I can't think of right now, but we're constantly chasing the enough when it's really the elusive enough, because enough is never enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I'm keep on piggybacking off other people's points today, but going off the fact that it's the quality of life aspect, and we think that the quality of life is the amount that we make, not the life that we're living at the moment. So it seems like, you know, if we're a higher class, then we're constantly working, and that's our quality of life is party hard and work really hard. Versus maybe if we're a lower class, then we're being, this idea of quality of life changes somehow.
I think for me, enough really relates to like the size of my family. So for me right now, like I don't have any children, I can kind of get by on bare minimum. But my future children, I don't want them living off of like boxes of macaroni and cheese. You know, I would think that maybe at that point there wouldn't be, and like there couldn't be enough. Like I would always want to give, or at least have the chance for my children to have endless opportunities. So I don't know. You know, right? I imagine that my focus would change.
Similar to what some people were saying, I think it really just depends on where you're at, and like you're gonna frequently people kind of continue to want more, and it's all gonna depend on like where you live, and like if everybody around you has more, you're gonna want more. You're never gonna like really have enough there, and maybe never be like if you're at the lower end of it, I think you're gonna be less happy. But if you're in a place where there's more of a continuum, like maybe where you're at the bottom, or if you're at the top, like then you might feel a little bit more content with what you have. But if you're constantly associating with people who have so much more than you then look at what you don't have, and you don't appreciate as much of what you have.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I think that's very much embedded in your own. It's like, I mean, everybody, what everybody is saying, like almost like pinpoint what class you guys are in just by the comments that you guys are making, and that's embedded in the fact that you want that social mobility and you want, you know, to continue to go up. But I wanted to close.
I just have one final thought. Okay, sorry. Flipping it around, like we haven't really we've talked about upward mobility, but what about the fear of falling and the fear of like dropping social class? And I wonder how that's different depending on what class you're in, what level of fear or how present that is in your mind.
That's a good question.
I actually spoke about that earlier. I think it's the exact opposite of the way I described it. So that when they go up, I think the highest fear is always at the top. It can always be knocked down. And so the lower, I don't think it's really fear of falling if you're in the lowest class, then there's no important you get. But the fear is always goes to the top and be knocked down and someone else take a spot.
Okay, last comment, and then I want to make my comment. Yeah.
I think that even if you're perceived as being in the bottom, you always feel there's somewhere lower you can go. So that fear persists even no matter where you are.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys for letting me come here and talk to you guys today. The goal of this whole thing, regardless of how disorganized my brain was today, was to just kind of get you guys to start it on just kind of having this conversation, because it's definitely not something that's usually talked about in the literature, like focusing on social class, and so I want you guys to just kind of continue on this journey, because definitely I'm not done with it, and it's ongoing, just like everything else. All right, thank you.
I know I did. Oh, no, but the whole reason is I heard it was so better than friends.
Oh my God.
It's not in you.
The fact of the matter is, I get this. Yeah, right. That's why I was